Shalom, ladies and gentlemen. This probably won't take that long, but anyway, the government is shutting down as of midnight. They failed to get the votes to fund the government. So it's going to be a lot going on. Number one, I think this is leading to the Epstein files because just before the chatter of shutdown, the Democratic Party were trying to obtain the Epstein files, right? And then all of a sudden, the Republicans were refusing to fund the government. And that's all stemming from Donald Trump. And see, if the government is shut down, nobody can get access to the Epstein files. And I really, at the end of the day, I believe this is what it's all about. They were coming close to getting those files, and all of a sudden, Donald Trump wants to shut down the government. So this one is going to be pretty nasty, y'all. And I'm going to show you why. Now, if you remember in the beginning of the year, when Elon Musk was still doing Doge, they were talking about coming up with these packages if people voluntarily step down from their government job. Well, that time is now. That time is now, which means, let me get this up on the screen. I think over 150,000 people took the deal and they had to depart in September. September is going to be over as of midnight. So these folks will not be coming back. So when the government locks down, they are permanently gone. So let me share my screen so I can show you this story. All right. So as of midnight, it's going to be a mass resignation, the biggest one in history. Now, I know that says 100,000, but when I went out and looked, it said it's about 150,000 workers that took the resignation deal from Donald Trump in the beginning of the year. So those folks, as of the 30th, will not be coming back to their government job. All right. So that's one thing. And here's another big thing that Donald Trump has been chattering about today. Donald Trump said during the shutdown, he is going to do a mass firing. And I know I have brothers and sisters that work for the federal, so a couple of my subscribers work for the federal government. So Donald Trump said he is going to do mass firings during the shutdown. So there are many people, he don't want people furloughed. Am I saying that right? Furlough. He doesn't want people to be on furlough. He wants them fired. So he's going to do a mass firing on top of the people that are going to resign. Okay. So this is going to be one big mess. This is going to be a mess, y'all. And I just pray that the people that are subscribed to me that work for the federal government, I hope you are spared. I hope you are not part of Donald Trump's mass firing because this is going to be a huge mess, y'all. You're going to have a lot of people, and we're in the fourth quarter of the year that are going to lose their jobs during this whole thing. So he already said this is what he's going to do. And they're going to also cut programs that the Democratic Party favors. So anything they favor, Donald Trump and the Republicans plan on cutting those programs during the shutdown. So look, no matter what happens, try to keep your head up. I know it is hard when you're going through something like a shutdown. because now your money's not coming in like it used to. And people are already struggling. So now, you got to worry about how, especially if you're renting or you have a mortgage that must be paid. And now the government is shutting down and people are not going to be able to pay their bills. They're not going to have any income coming in during this shutdown. And I remember how hard it was. And Donald Trump pushed the other one out when he was in his first term, nearly 3 weeks. And I remember a lot of his people were mad at him because they didn't like the fact that he caved. Well, he may not cave this time because of the Epstein files. I'm just saying. So he's going to take this time to really hurt people during this shutdown. So this one is not going to be good. I think this one's going to be pretty nasty. So, my brothers and sisters that are subscribed to me and you work for the government, my prayers to you and your family. I hope you make it through these tough times. Losing your job or not being able to get your paycheck, that is no joke. For real, it's no joke. All right, y'all. So, I put together a few videos on them talking about this shutdown, which will begin at midnight. So this time it's real. See, all the other times at the last minute they would fund the government. Well, this time they are completely split. They already had the vote earlier today on whether to fund the government or not, and the vote did not go through. So the shutdown will officially begin at midnight. Now, how long this will last, I guess we shall all see. We shall all see. Okay, it's just interesting how this is happening October 1st. Yeah, October is going to be something else. That's for sure. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, y'all, give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Mhm. Oh, yeah, it's gonna be all kinds of things going on because people are in a desperate situation. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you. There are close to 43,000 federal employees in Illinois, many scattered throughout federal offices in the loop. Nicole Cantello works for the Environmental Protection Agency and represents about 1,000 EPA Midwest workers as their union president. Cantello is worried she and her colleagues will be without jobs soon if President Trump follows through on threats to use a government shutdown to fire federal employees.
The federal workforce has been pummeled with threat after threat after threat, and this is the latest one. And after a certain amount of time, you're not going to have anybody who wants to serve the American people.
Senate Democrats refuse to accept a House bill that extends government funding until November 21st unless Republicans include funding for health care. Democrats say under Trump's big policy bill, close to 13 million Americans will lose Medicaid.
We can't allow you to keep gutting the American people's health care. And if this is the only window we have to fight for that, well, we're going to use that window.
Democrats are also fighting to extend Obamacare subsidies that are set to expire at the end of the year.
We have agreed to have a conversation on that, but don't hold hostage the entire federal government.
But Democrats fear those conversations will never happen.
Why would we trust them when we've been lied to before, when they reneged on previous deals?
If they don't believe that we're negotiating good faith or we're not having an appropriate conversation about appropriations, we're going to be in this exact same boat in 7 weeks.
Meantime, if a deal is not reached by tonight, Nicole Cantello says it's the American people who will lose if there are furloughs or layoffs at the EPA and other federal departments.
This is a direct threat on our clean air, clean water, on the ability of EPA to protect itself.
If a government shutdown does happen, not all federal employees will be furloughed. Essential workers such as air traffic controllers, the military, and federal law enforcement officers will remain on the job.
I can't believe Trump just said this.
We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like.
But Jess, Trump is right. If Democrats don't sign this spending bill, it's their fault for the government shutdown.
Do you know why they're not signing it?
Because they don't want to give Trump his way, ever.
Nope. Do you have health care?
Yeah.
How would you feel if your insurance went up 75%?
I wouldn't like that.
This spending bill would let ACA subsidies expire, which would make premiums jump 75% for millions of Americans.
Wait, really?
Do you support the education system?
Yes.
This bill slashes education funding by 15% and eliminates all funding for public broadcasting.
Oh, so Democrats not signing the bill is an attempt to help everyday Americans?
Exactly. And here's the thing. Trump's already been firing federal workers all year. He's already been cutting programs, but now he's using the shutdown as an excuse to blame all of it on Democrats.
You're right. Republicans control all three branches of government. Maybe they're to blame.
Time is running out to prevent a government shutdown by tonight.
Democratic and Republican congressional leaders show no signs of compromise to avoid a lapse in funding. ABC's Olivia Rubin has the latest from Washington, D.C.
Today, the government just hours away from shutting down. President Trump this morning sounding like it's all but certain. How many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we made you a lot.
But it's not just layoffs. What's different this time around, the White House is threatening possible mass firings if a shutdown is not averted. Just hours after a White House meeting with lawmakers yesterday, the president turning to mocking Democratic leadership with a deep fake video on social media with fabricated false claims about their demands. The video shows an AI-generated version of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero and a fake mustache with fabricated audio of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Jeffries on the Capitol steps this morning.
Mr. President, the next time you have something to say about me, don't cop out through a racist and fake AI video. When I'm back in the Oval Office, say it to my face.
Democrats refusing to back down, saying they won't vote to fund the government unless Republicans reverse cuts to Medicaid and keep healthcare premiums from rising for some 20 million Americans.
The Democrats, and as you know, they want to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally. But our country can't handle people that come into our country illegally. And they want to give them full health care benefits.
This morning, Senate Republicans ramping up the pressure, planning to put a clean House-passed bill on the floor without any of those demands from Democrats, daring them to vote against it.
I just say to my Democrat colleagues, there is no reason for a shutdown.
If the government shuts down, as many as 4 million federal employees could go without a paycheck. 2 million troops could be forced to work without pay. And despite all those workers who would go without pay, the $174,000 salary for lawmakers on Capitol Hill would continue uninterrupted. Olivia Rubin, ABC News, Washington.
A memo just leaked last night that Donald Trump intends to fire up to 1.9 million federal employees if the government shuts down a week. How is he able to do this? Because what typically happens when the government shuts down is that the federal jobs that are paid for by discretionary funds, which is what Congress sets every year, are furloughed, essentially. So people who train air traffic controllers, for example, or people who are park rangers and training park rangers, these people oftentimes are told to go home, they can't do anything, and that when the government shutdown is over, they return. What Donald Trump is suggesting is instead of furloughing those people, he will fire them. What does that mean for you? It means that EPA field inspectors, it means HUD specialists who help you with affordable housing. It means Social Security claims processors who are handling new claims will be completely fired, not even furloughed. Now, there are people who are considered essential employees, like your air traffic controllers, who work through this. They do not get paid. And why is he doing this? Is because he is intimidating Democrats into bending the knee so that they don't shut down the government. When I was chief of staff at Labor, I saw how much harm Trump did the first time because there were so many open positions that inspected work sites for safety, for example, that even to get to the baseline of what happened before Trump's administration in terms of hiring would take years. He is trying to completely destroy government as we know it, rebuild it in his image, and the impact may be generational. Is any of this legal? Probably not, but this is what Donald Trump does. He acts first and worries about the legal ramifications later. The implications and the harm for our country are dire, and we are just getting started on how bad this could be.
So if the government shuts down, which here on Capitol Hill is looking increasingly likely, it has a huge impact across the federal government. First and foremost, millions of people, federal employees, soldiers, would go without pay. Some of them would be told that they're essential and be told to show up to work anyway. Those are TSA agents, air traffic controllers, people who do weather forecasting at the National Weather Service. And then there are employees who would be deemed non-essential. They would be furloughed and told, don't show up until the shutdown is over. The thing about a government shutdown is the longer it lasts, the worse the impacts are. And so what we've seen as government shutdowns keep going and going and going, services start to get impacted. So for instance, in other shutdowns, we've seen delays at airports because even though they're told to show up to work, some air traffic controllers, some TSA agents, they call out because they're not getting paid for the work that they're doing. It could also lead to delays in FDA inspections at food processors. The list goes on and on. SNAP and WIC programs for food assistance for mothers and those who are lower income could start to be impacted the longer the shutdown goes on. The mail still goes out and Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those checks are still processed, but you could see delays in the processing of those as well, because there are some employees, the agencies responsible for those, that would be furloughed, or others who would be working without pay. And of course, there is a massive economic impact on the families of federal employees and soldiers who would be going without paychecks for days, weeks. The longest shutdown in American history was 35 days. That was in the first Trump administration. It's the last time we saw a government shutdown, although we've gotten close a few times since then. And there's one more thing to know about government shutdowns, which is while federal employees aren't paid by law in a government shutdown, members of Congress still get paid.
Are only hours away from a government shutdown, and the Democrats have a very clear binary choice. They can choose to keep the government open by voting for a short-term, nonpartisan, clean, continuing resolution, 24 pages long, or they can vote to shut the government down. That's what we're looking at. They, as you all know, have voted during the time they had the majority 13 different times, and when Biden was in the White House, on short-term continuing resolutions, 13 different times. And so it begs the question is what's changed? And I think what's changed is President Trump is in the White House. That's what this is about. This is politics. And there isn't any substantive reason why there ought to be a government shutdown. This is something that has been done routinely, as I said, 13 different times when the Democrats had the majority. But we are not going to be held hostage for over $1 trillion in new spending on a continuing resolution, nor are we going to be held hostage to allow illegals to get free health care in a continuing resolution. These are things that they're demanding as part of their so-called negotiation. Ladies and gentlemen, there isn't anything here to negotiate. This is a routine funding resolution to keep the government open so that we can continue our appropriations work and fund the government in the old-fashioned way, which is allowing the Appropriations Committee, Democrats and Republicans, to work together as they have been. And by the way, the Democrat leader keeps talking about not consulting. The Appropriations Committee, they picked the date. Democrats and Republicans, the big four on the Appropriations Committee, were consulting. They picked the date for the continuing resolution, November the 21st. And so this has been an open process from the very beginning. This year, we opened up the appropriations process, something that wasn't done when the Democrats had the majority here in the Senate. But they have a clear choice in front of them today. And I hope there are Democrats out there. This may not represent the view of their leadership, but I'm hoping there are Democrats out there who are reasonable, and understand what's at stake here. And as they have articulated many times in the past, the costs associated to the American people with the government shutdown. This is totally avoidable. It is a decision they're going to have to make. And if the government shuts down, it is on the Senate Democrats. The House has acted. The president's ready to sign the bill. And all that's left is for 8 Democrats to join us in passing that bill today. Senator.
The question right now in D.C. is not if there will be a government shutdown, but how long a government shutdown is going to be. Both Republicans and Democrats are pretty dug in their positions right now, and there has been a lot of finger pointing today between the White House and Congress.
We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them and irreversible by them, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like.
Trump admitted himself that he is using Americans as political pawns. He is admitting that he is doing the firing of people if, God forbid, it happens.
We're getting a better idea about what the economic impact is of a shutdown. So the Congressional Budget Office is now estimating that 750,000 federal employees are going to be furloughed. And remember, Trump did promise that some of them would be laid off. The CBO also came out with a letter saying that there will be an impact on the private sector, and some industries that usually have the government purchase goods and services might never recover the funds if the government shutdown goes on for more than 2 weeks.
Now that the shutdown deadline has arrived, here's a look at what may be operational and what may not be or may be curtailed as the shutdown proceeds. Social Security and Medicare benefits, we are told, will continue normally. Everybody getting those benefits will continue to get them as they normally have. Unemployed people will continue to receive jobless benefits during a shutdown. State Department employees will continue to process passports and visas and will continue to assist Americans abroad during a shutdown. The National Weather Service will continue its forecasts and warnings during a potential government shutdown. That's crucial because we're still in the middle of hurricane season. DHS, ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and TSA screeners will continue to work at their jobs, but some of them won't be paid during a shutdown. Unlike past shutdowns, the administration hasn't laid out all of its plans so far, so in some cases, we don't know what will be open and not open. We're basing our reporting on what typically happens during shutdowns. Also, we're told that veterans will continue to get their crucial medical services during a government shutdown. That will include suicide prevention programs. They'll remain operational. Homelessness programs for veterans, those also will remain operational. What could be compromised, delayed, or possibly shut down? Well, the FDA inspectors could have their services either delayed or halted. They might have food service inspections delayed. Drug manufacturing sites could have inspections delayed or halted during a shutdown. You can expect to see possibly airport delays during a shutdown because TSA screeners won't be paid. That often results in a lack of staffing at airports, so you could see some significant delays there. While TSA workers won't get paychecks during a shutdown, they've typically received back pay when the shutdowns ended. What's not clear at the moment is the status of the national monuments in Washington and elsewhere, and the status of the national parks. As to which of those facilities would remain open, that's still a little unclear at the moment, so the days ahead will be a little bit fluid there.
We are just a few hours away from a government shutdown, so what can you expect if it actually happens this time? And it looks like it will. First, you have to understand that a government shutdown is not random. It's scheduled, and if it happens, it doesn't mean the U.S. government is broke. And it doesn't mean the U.S. government has no money. The U.S. government has plenty of money. If the government shuts down, it means Congress has failed to do the one job that it has. See, the U.S. government runs on a fiscal calendar from October 1st through September 30th. And every single year, it is Congress's job to find a way to fund the government before the fiscal year ends. That means it's Congress's job to figure out how much money each department and agency will get in their budget and figure out which priorities will and will not be funded. And if September 30th comes around and there is no spending plan approved by both the House and the Senate and signed by the president, no government agencies or departments get their budget allotment, so they don't have money to operate. Then they have to close, and ultimately the government shuts down. And tomorrow is September 30th. And we are not even in the ballpark of a deal to keep the government open. Okay, so now that you know how government shutdowns happen, let's talk about what happens when the government shuts down. During a shutdown, the federal government must stop all non-essential functions until Congress passes a spending bill. Each agency and department determines what work is essential and what is not. And in this Trump administration, the executive branch also has a big say. The federal workers who are considered non-essential will be furloughed, and agencies and departments that are considered non-essential will close. Now, instead of running down a list of what is considered non-essential and will be shutting down, because it's a pretty long list, it's actually much easier to tell you what is considered essential and will be staying open. So Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, military operations, law enforcement, U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, and air traffic control. All those departments will stay open. However, depending on how long the shutdown lasts, the people who work at those departments and agencies may have to go to work without pay. The longer the shutdown lasts, the worse things get. Almost immediately after a government shutdown, the national parks will close. So if you have a trip planned to see one of our beautiful national parks in the next week or so, you may want to reschedule. And if the shutdown lasts more than a few days, passport processing could slow down or stop. Federal courts, including immigration courts, could start postponing or canceling hearings. And some federal government contractors may not get paid. Now, your payments from Social Security, Disability, Medicare, Medicaid, those will all still be processed, and the post office will stay open. However, some of the federal employees who work at those places are considered non-essential. So if you are looking to get help at those places, or you want to perhaps process a new disability or Social Security claim, or if you have questions about your existing benefits, getting those answers will become more difficult the longer the shutdown lasts. The White House used to keep a department by department list of shutdown plans, but now this Trump administration says each agency and department will post their own shutdown plans, which I will email as many of them to you as I can in tonight's Facts HQ email, so make sure you sign yourself up. The last time the U.S. government shut down was in 2018 and 2019 during the first Trump administration. Back then, the government shut down for 35 days. That was the longest shutdown in 40 years. The standoff in Congress back then was over Trump's demand for almost $6 billion to fund his border wall project. Lawmakers in the House and the Senate fought over that money for 35 days. But the shutdown actually costs the American economy billions of dollars. And after 5 weeks, then President Trump, during his first term, ultimately signed a spending plan that did not include the funding for his border wall. Now, these days, the issues between Democrats and Republicans are much different. But in the end, Republicans right now control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So it is on them to keep the government open. And because of the rules of the Senate, coming up with a funding plan must be negotiated with Democrats, because Republicans do not have the 60 votes necessary to pass the types of spending plans that President Trump wants on their own.
Sir, good to have you back on. Where are we at tonight?
Well, we just took our last vote of the day. There will be a shutdown. You know, everything happens for a reason, but sometimes the reason is you're stupid and you made a bad decision. And my Democratic colleagues have made a very, very bad decision here. I knew they were going to do this 2 weeks ago when they listed their demands. They're demanding, for example, that we not check people on Medicaid for eligibility by income. Just let anybody sign up who wants to sign up. They're demanding that we give free health care to foreign nationals who are in our country illegally. They're demanding that taxpayers pay for sex change operations. If you list all of their demands and add them up, it's between 1.2 and 1.5 trillion dollars. Now, they know it's an unserious proposal. They know we're not going to accept it. That tells me that this decision to shut down government is not based on policy, Rob. It's based on politics. And here's the politics. The loon wing, the socialist wing of the Democratic Party, does not like Senator Schumer. And he wants them to like him. He wants them to love him. They have asked that government be shut down, and Senator Schumer has agreed. But once you shut down government, you've got to figure out how to get it back open. A wise person once said, if you pray for rain, you got to be prepared to deal with the mud. And I don't know how they're going to deal with the mud, because we will never, ever agree to this list of demands. So I guess we'll just stay shut down in perpetuity.
That's your side, and that's the Republican side. That makes sense to me. I've seen their list of demands. This is how they're telling the story on their side. I want to play that and get your reaction to it.
The president has sadly made his position clear. He would rather shut down the government than work with congressional Democrats.
Hours away from a government shutdown, a Democratic show of force today as they stand firm, refusing to pass Republicans' bill to fund the government in opposition to President Trump's actions and looming health care cuts.
We're ready to work in a bipartisan way to keep government open, to lower costs, and to save health care.
All part of a blitz of House Democratic events today. While inside, House Republicans are away. The halls on that side empty and the chamber shuttered after they passed their funding bill last week and are daring Senate Democrats to keep rejecting it. With funding set to expire at midnight, Democratic leader Chuck Schumer putting the onus on President Trump.
He is using Americans as political pawns. He is admitting that he is doing the firing of people if, God forbid, it happens.
Good afternoon, everyone.
But Senate Majority Leader John Thune drew a hard line, indicating he won't hold talks until Democrats relent.
The negotiation happens when the government's open. So let's keep the government open, and then we will have the negotiation.
A government shutdown would be the first since 2018 and 2019, during President Trump's first term, when his demands for border wall funding led to a record 35-day impasse. President Trump today doubled down on his threat of possible mass firings instead of just temporary furloughs.
So the last person that wants to shut down is us. Now, with that being said, we can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them and irreversible by them, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like.
Consequences that Republican lawmakers defended. We've never had mass firings during a shutdown before.
We've never had Democrats that are so insane as this, because this is going to last a lot. If they shut down the government tonight, my prediction is it'll go on for a long, long time.
Mr. Trump and his agencies have taken much of their shutdown fight online. The main page of the Department of Housing and Urban Development featured a seemingly unprecedented bright red banner pinning a shutdown on radical left Democrats, language that has raised flags as a possible ethics or legal violation. This after the president posted controversially on social media with fake AI-generated video that played vulgar words and depicted House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero. The New York congressman responded.
Mr. President, the next time you have something to say about me, don't cop out through a racist and fake AI video. When I'm back in the Oval Office, say it to my face.
A few hundred feet away, we sat with a group of protesting former federal workers fired in the Doge purge, who all said they want a shutdown.
By shutting down the government, it will help at least put an opposition to what this administration is currently doing.
We have to get to a place where we're not signing a check on the Republicans doing whatever they want.
They want pushback and opposition to Trump, dynamics that are leading to a shutdown. But as with others at the Capitol, these former federal workers did not know the way out of one.
Joining us for more on this are congressional correspondent Lisa Desjardins and White House correspondent Liz Landers. Lisa, over to you first. Now, you've covered a number of these near shutdowns and shutdowns. Give us the latest on where we are now.
A week ago, I was saying 80% chance. We're now at 99% chance. We are going to see a shutdown. That 1%, act of God, maybe this is a dream. Basically, we are going into a shutdown. Let me show you what's happening right now at this moment. On the Senate floor, they are taking essentially show votes of the Democratic version of keeping government funding with the Democrats' demands in it about healthcare and other things. They will also have a vote on the Republican version, which does not have that in it. We expect both of those to fail. What does it look like on the House side right now? We have nothing to show you because they're not in town. The House is out until at least Friday and actually more likely out until next week. So what happens here? Well, the Senate plans to stay in town more or less, have votes probably Saturday. I don't expect anything fundamentally to change, though. Now, so when you think about shutdowns this century, there are two kinds, some that are about 1 day or 3 days long. And if you get past that window, which we're going to, then we get into 2-week or 3-week long shutdowns. What is the way out potentially? Already, there are very small voices in the Senate. Maybe some bipartisan groups of senators can get together, but that's not a yet tangible kind of crystallizing force. One senior Democratic source told me right now they are minute by minute, hour by hour. The shutdown could be long.
Liz, meanwhile, we've heard from the president and other Republicans. One of their main talking points here is that Democrats are shutting down the government to fund free health care for unauthorized immigrants. What do we need to know about that claim?
Well, this is something that we've heard Republicans both on Capitol Hill and at the White House. We heard the vice president say this yesterday to a group of reporters, and then President Trump has said this several times as well. He reiterated this earlier today in the Oval Office. I believe we have some of that video.
One of the things they want to do is they want to give incredible Medicare, the Cadillac Medicare to illegal immigrants. And what that does is it keeps them coming into our country, and like they do in California. And no country can afford that. No country.
Undocumented immigrants are not allowed to be enrolled in federally funded healthcare coverage in this country. That includes Medicare, Medicaid, CHIPS, the Child Healthcare Program, and even some of those Affordable Care Act subsidies. So this claim that the president is making is already barred under federal law right now. There are some few exceptions to that. That includes Medicaid reimbursing hospitals for giving emergency services to people. If you show up at a hospital and you are having a heart attack, you're not going to be asked your immigration status before a doctor treats you. So they will reimburse that through the Medicaid system. Also, some states have some of their own policies. California, which is one of the states that the president makes reference to, has allowed 1.6 million immigrants in that state through a program that Governor Gavin Newsom implemented a few years ago to get on Medicaid coverage that is funded through the state. And he is also having to change that program now. We reached out earlier today to Senator Patty Murray. She's one of the senior most Democrats. And she said that, look, Republicans are lying about the healthcare changes that Democrats are fighting for right now. Lisa made mention of this. She said the Democrats, are focused on the healthcare premiums that may double soon. And President Trump, I would add, was asked to clarify this exact point earlier today. He did not directly answer that question.
So, Liz, we have Democrats blaming Republicans, Republicans blaming Democrats. How are the American public looking at this?
So PBS had a poll with NPR and Marist that came out just earlier today, and we asked some of these questions about how the American public is viewing this. One of those questions was, what should members of Congress do? And in the poll, it found that it's about 50-50 split, that Americans believe, 50% believe that members of Congress should compromise to avoid a shutdown, while 49% of Americans say that members of Congress should stand on principle. So that may explain why we are inching closer to this shutdown. Parties are hearing a split from their voters on this. And then another question that was asked was about who is to blame if this shutdown happens. More Americans said that Republicans will be to blame at 38 percentage points, but Democrats will still get about 27% of the blame in the eyes of Americans. And a third of Americans, 31%, say that both parties are to blame. And just a final thought, Amna, one independent voter told NewsHour that while both parties will try to score political points from a shutdown, quote, "You all look like idiots."
Lisa, over to you. What happens next?
Okay, at midnight is when shutdown procedures begin. Agencies will send out guidance. Most of those agencies will have about half a day to actually get the shutdown in motion. And then furloughs will begin at that point. Now, what's interesting and unusual about this shutdown right now, Amna, is some of those agencies have still, as I speak to you, not posted their plans. That includes the National Park Service. Our producer, Kyle Medora, reached out to them, and they got back to us and said, our plan for the shutdown is currently being reviewed and updated, and watch for it to be posted. Well, we don't know exactly with the National Park Service, something obviously many Americans have made their plans for. We're not exactly sure. Usually they close. Some of the former employees are saying for safety, they should close. but we don't know yet. Now, one other thing, let's talk about the cost of the shutdown, what's ahead for us. Let's take a look. First of all, according to the Congressional Budget Office, new numbers out today, they estimate about 750,000 employees will be furloughed on the average day. That's $400 million in salary each day that the government will ultimately pay, but will not get work for. The last shutdown, $3 billion in economic losses. Again, that was a record long shutdown, but it was more narrow than this one. This one involves more agencies. We could be in for a very bumpy ride. A lot of questions ahead.
A lot of questions ahead. Lisa Desjardins, Liz Landers, thank you as always.
So y'all, this don't look good. This don't look good. And when I reflect back on the last shutdown, because I knew a couple of people that work for the federal government and they were furloughed. So hold on. Let me just get rid of that for a moment. So what happened if you go back and look at the previous shutdown? For a while, people still got up and went to work. And about, I think, like week 2, week 3, when they weren't getting paid, they said a lot of people just stopped showing up for work because they weren't getting paid. Well, Donald Trump said he wants ICE and the National Guard to remain on the streets. And they already admitted they're not paying the National Guard the entire time during the shutdown, but they expect them to still carry out their duties in these cities that they're going to. They're going to stop showing up. That's what's going to happen. That's what happened the last time when people weren't getting paid. They stopped showing up, and they're going to stop showing up too. And if you remember, Donald Trump stiffed the contractors. The contractors were really the only ones that were working through the government shutdown. Donald Trump refused to pay the contractors. So the ones that worked during the last government shutdown, they didn't get paid one dime. So a lot of people are not going to go out here and work for free. They're not going to do it. And he's talking about, okay, so the federal government has right now 4 million nationwide federal workers. He wants to cut 1.9 million of the 4 million. So he wants to cut the workers in half nationwide. So that's what he wants to do, this mass firing. So over half, nearly half of the 4 million will be let go during this shutdown. It's going to be a lot of people without jobs. And I really feel bad because, a lot of our brothers and sisters do work for the federal government. But then in the same token, Donald Trump's going to hurt a lot of his own people too. A lot of them are going to suffer right along with everyone else. So when the shutdown happens, I'm going to be going online to get videos directly from the government employees. And just, we'll probably do a few lives on some of the things they are posting online and videos they're doing. Because I'm sure, when Elon was there in Washington with Donald Trump, boy, they were coming on like a train wreck with all of those videos crying about being fired. And we're about to see all of that over again as Donald Trump do these mass firings during the shutdown. So it's about to get crazy. How you doing, True Royal? So it's about to get crazy up in here. And they're saying, now I don't know, we got to wait and see, but they're saying it is a great chance that this shutdown may last longer than the last shutdown. And you know, the last shutdown was 35 days. And they're now saying this can go beyond the last shutdown. So it's a big mess. Again, my heart goes out to our brothers and sisters that have government jobs, and you may not ever be going back to that job because of Donald Trump. So we shall see. And I will keep a close eye on this one, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And those of you, if you work for the federal government, just drop me a line and let me know what's going on, because, y'all are kind of on the inside, the ones that work for the government. So, if there's some new development, please let me know. Please let me know. All right, y'all. Be on the lookout for my upcoming live streams tomorrow, and you still got time to get in your orders for the hair growth butter and get 30% off. I'm working on a new batch tonight, so you'll get a really fresh batch in the mail tomorrow. So, y'all, I know we are in turbulent times, but still try to enjoy your life. Don't let all these politics drag you down. For real. Shalom, family.